Starboard is a world-leading water sports equipment manufacturer focused on sustainability, with title-winning designs across stand-up paddleboarding, wingfoiling and windsurfing. Starboard is also the owner and operator of the Olympic iQFOiL windsurfing class.
What is very important for us in the sport of windsurfing is to see that the cutting-edge style of windsurfing is showcased in the Olympics. So what we wanted to do was to see how we could get foiling windsurfing into the Olympics. And it was great to see us winning the bid, as we knew that now we can showcase windsurfing really how it is on the top level. And we felt that the sport and, I think also the industry felt this was the way to go. So at that time, it was a big thing.
Since the very beginning, since Starboard put forward the iQFOiL design as a new class in the Olympics, sustainability has been at the heart of it. A couple of the things that we've committed to doing and we've been doing since the beginning are we calculate the emissions for every iQFOiL setup. We work quite hard to make sure we understand the impact of our board, of our rigs and of our foils. And from there, we work with our partners at Worldview International Foundation in Myanmar to plant enough mangroves to offset those emissions 10 times over. But that's not all we're doing. We're also doing our bit to fight plastic pollution. For every board that we sell, we pick up 11.4 kilograms of plastic from the beaches in Thailand and Myanmar. Why 11.4 kilos? That's the weight of an iQFOiL board, so that all of our athletes know that when they take home a board, they're also picking up that exact same amount from the shoreline, making sure it doesn't ever end up in the ocean.
At Starboard, we also understand the need to reduce the impact of our products in the first place.
We have to say that the iQFOiL that we have on racing at the moment is not the best board eco-friendly, but we are working a lot to try to reduce this carbon footprint.
That's why for the last year, we have been working hard at Starboard HQ to push the boundaries for innovation in equipment design, with a focus on sustainability.
Yeah, so the eQFOiL product is the environmental question for, because there's a big question here. It gives us a platform to be able to focus on the one single product. So we can really go into how that is built and how we can build it better and how we can measure it properly and find innovative ways to test it out.
The first thing we do when trying to reduce the impact of a board is try to understand it. To do that, we need to perform a life cycle analysis.
When we do a life cycle analysis on one of our products, what we're doing is we're assessing the environmental impact of that product from the moment the raw materials are extracted from the ground all the way until the product's end of life. There's no defined specific way to measure the overall impact of the board. What you're measuring is lots and lots of different metrics. You've got to understand something that is going to be better in one way may well be worse in another. So it's kind of a balancing act.
We look at the overall picture, and one part of course is the carbon footprint, but on the other hand there is material scarcity, and it's what happens to the materials after its first life. And then we see that the balance might be that using renewable materials like cardboard weighs much better on our scale compared to using plastic.
When you're considering all of these environmental factors, you then also have to look at business factors. And we might make the most environmentally friendly board ever, but if it only lasts 3 weeks and it costs a fortune, then it's not something that we'll be able to implement, and it's not really an encouraging thing to ask other people to implement as well.
When we design Olympic equipment, we have to consider a few key performance factors first.
We know that Olympic board is used extremely heavily, so we need to build this board extra strong. We search the maximum performance as much as possible. So of course we make our board as light as possible, particularly in foiling, because foiling is weight in the air. So we need to have something with reasonably light. And of course we need to be efficient in how we choose the material to be at a reasonable price, but strong enough and light enough. We work together to try to find a way to make it works, because it's not that easy to have eco-friendly material who can resist enough and be light enough for this use. So we make impact test, flex test, stiffness test, etc. to find out where we are at compared to the materials that we use now. And then with that information, we start to make a new layup who have the big possibility of success.
Carbon footprint is probably the most well-known metric for a project like this. When looking closely at the carbon footprint numbers from our LCA, we noticed that almost 40% of an iQFOiL board's raw material emissions come from the carbon fibre alone.
Yeah, so we use a lot of carbon, and it has a huge emission factor. Amongst any products we use is that far beyond. I think it's something like 35 kilos per kilo carbon, so it's pretty wide.
So the carbon that we use in general in windsurfing is try to have a board as light as possible, because the carbon are extremely light and very, very good also in strength. So this is very important, for example, for in the flex of the board, the stiffness of the board, so how the board reacts in general.
There are other materials, the volcanic rock, when the lava comes down from the hills, when I sprout it out. That rock, we call it basalt. We can use that. It's sitting in between carbon qualities and glass qualities. However, the carbon footprint is 60 times less than that of carbon, and it's even less than that of glass. So we'd love to see how can we start to implement basalt into production.
When using alternatives to carbon fibre in our boards, we see a significant drop in carbon footprint. So we're working hard to find ways that we can use less or use other materials in its place. But for this project, we're also looking beyond just carbon footprint. We also want to improve the sustainability of our board in other ways, like finding better ways for the board to be recycled.
So windsurf boards are what we call a composite material. That means it's made of lots of different materials all put together. When we're making a board, the idea is to design it to last as long as possible. When you're designing something to be super durable, you're literally designing it to be difficult to break down. And that's all that a lot of recycling is, whether it's being broken down by chemicals or mechanics. It's trying to break apart those bonds and separate those different materials. We have looked into recycling windsurf boards in the past. We had some real troubles because one of the materials that we have in our product is called PVC. And when PVC is heated to high temperatures, there's a risk that it's going to release chlorine gas, which obviously very dangerous for the people working on it, and not something that the recyclers want to have to deal with, which is another barrier to recycling our boards at the moment.
PVC foam, just the production of it, you just don't want to be close to it. And afterwards, it's very, very hard to actually be able to recycle it. So I'd love to see if we could remove ourselves from PVC, but it is a fantastic product to use. PT is still possible, but we need to make it in smarter ways. So there are many other options out there, and we need to work faster to find the best options that we can consider.
Ultimately, we decided to use Diab's PR recycled PET foam for this project. It's a material made from at least 45% post-consumer recycled PET bottles. This means that the raw material has a lower impact on finite resources, as well as improving our ability to recover materials from the board at the end of its life. Another focus for this project was finding ways to reduce the impact of our products on the people involved in their production.
There are people working throughout our supply chain, from supporting with the extraction through to the manufacturing, through testing and design phases, and we want to make sure that the materials we use aren't going to impact them. So for example, things like glass fibre, fiberglass have a low emission factor, so they're not very carbon intensive, but the small fibres can irritate the skin. It's not comfortable for workers throughout the supply chain.
Fibers glass, we use a lot of this fiber for board with more affordable. All this material is not friendly for your skin, your breath, your lung. Our stuff are really protected. The reason why, as soon as you use dangerous products, they have the full wet suit, the mask, carbon mask, the glasses, the helmet to protect them and to make them more happy and keep going on this as long as possible.
We can reduce the impact on them, we can make sure that it's a safer environment for them to work in, then that's another way that we can improve.
Alors, wood is something that Jean-Luc Olmar, who is the first shipper of Starboard, implement in the Starboard construction. That is, by this, we know Starboard. Starboard was the first brand to bring wood on the market. But since that, the carbon board evolved a lot and became lighter. And even us, we have to stop to make the wood board because carbon was taking it over completely. Arrived to find a layup to bring back the wood and to be more light than it was before, and is basically at the same weight, more or less, than the carbon construction from the other brands. The look, the wood look, I always love it. So for me, is a very great success. When you see the board, say, wow, it's beautiful. For me, it's way beautiful than the current iQFOiL.
So it's called the eQFOiL. The shape and the design purpose is based on the iQFOiL, IQ standing for innovation and quality. Now the eQFOiL, it simply stands for eco-innovation and quality. So we're trying to maintain that same high performance product, but we're not just looking at innovating in terms of speed and performance, we're also looking at innovating in terms of the environmental impact.
The result of all this work is our eQFOiL concept board, keeping the same shape as its Olympic counterpart, but boasting a 37% reduction in the carbon footprint of the board's raw materials, translating to an 18% reduction in overall carbon footprint. We also see a 10 to 30% reduction in impact across all 4 of our other environmental metrics as well.
The idea is that when you create a concept board like this, it's not about the product that you create at the end of it, but the learning that goes along the way. So whether we've picked up new materials that we can use in other products, whether we've looked at processes that we can use elsewhere, or identified areas that we need to improve normally, by pulling this in together into a concept project, we're actually not just studying one product, but we're studying our entire system and network. I'm excited to see where it can go further. I think we know from looking at the board that it's not at iQFOiL level yet, but we didn't expect that. It's definitely not perfect, but it's a step in the right direction.
All this stuff with experimental, I was skeptic at the beginning because everything we tried in the past failed. But here, I'm more confident because we found out something was interesting with the EPS. This is the biggest step forward for me. And we have some basalt, who is promising also. We replace fiber for the wood, so of course is another step forward. For the PVC, I'm not sure yet, but we are going in the right way in my opinion. And I will say that it's not the end of the development, but it's promising.
I think for me, the big part of this has been is actually how we can improve products.
It's a very interesting project because we have to be more eco-friendly and to try to pollute a lot less than now. I say that the road is still very long, but for sure, this is the first board that we made for this project, and we found out something that we should not do and other things that we should do. That is open our mind to the next step. So let's try to do our best and to bring this to a next level, and I'm sure that in 5 years it will be unbelievable.
When we've been involved with the eQFOiL project and generally tried to make lower emission products and less toxic products for a very long time, I'm just surprised about how slow we are moving everything. Right now we are of course looking at how can we, together with World Sailing, set new standards for a lower footprint. I think to make a lower carbon footprint board, we probably need to have a higher weight. So again, maybe the board goes up 0.5 kilo. But maybe we can find ways where the class will actually accept this. And then we could argue that maybe going into LA, that we have a carbon footprint that is that much lower. And if we can do that, of course, we can see if all other boat classes can do it. And of course, any other sports classes can start to look at this. So it would be fun to use the iQFOiL as an eQFOiL establishment, and EQ can also be your experimental class. So there are many ways to look at how we can drive sports. As a brand, we can say something, but through the class, we can say everything. How can one Olympic sport or one Olympic class help to drive the rest of the Olympic movement? Particularly we see 2028 in LA being a space where maybe the whole Olympic Games can sort of copy and paste what we are doing for our Olympic class. LA has a fantastic potential, and I think that be up for the task to see how can we actually create enough reforestation, plant enough mangroves to bring down 10 times the emissions of the entire games. Why would we like to go 10 times? You know, frankly speaking, if you just kind of reduce and reduce, it's just getting worse. It's like more and more water coming into the boat. And if the only thing we do is to not let more water coming into the boat is still having a lot of water inside. And that's what we have today. And we have to fast track things now. So we need to draw down a lot more than what we are shooting up. And start to get a little bit back in balance, the ambition must be 10 times. And being the Olympics, you know, we want to be the best in the world. We're going to do things that haven't been done before. That's what the Olympic athlete stands for. That's what the Olympic Games stands for. Doing something extraordinary.